Okay, while you are getting signed in, a couple things to talk about here that will be important for this little activity that we're going to be doing today on cell size and transport. Yesterday, we finished off class talking about the big three methods of cell transport: diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Okay, we didn't get to the endo and exocytosis stuff, but we'll do that tomorrow. Okay. What we need for this particular activity is knowledge of diffusion, because we're talking about transport within a cell. And we're looking at the effect that cell size would have on a cell's ability to transport material by diffusion. Okay, so quick review. Diffusion can move anything within the cell. Okay, so through the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, it is passive, which means the cell has no control over it. It simply moves material from high concentration to low concentration or down the concentration gradient. Okay, it is slow and not targeted. Right? That is something that will come up when we start looking at the effect of an increasing cell size on a cell's ability to use diffusion effectively to transport material. Okay? The other two really don't have much to do with what we're doing today. Osmosis only transports water across a membrane to balance salt concentrations, and it is passive, okay, whereas active transport uses energy and it's across a membrane. Since the other two are both about crossing a membrane, they're not what we're concerned with here. Just diffusion, because it's how stuff moves through the cytoplasm from one place to another. Okay? All right. Now, let's say that I have these two cells. One's very big, one is a lot smaller. Okay? In which one of these cells will diffusion work better? Right, because diffusion is slow and not targeted. And it's a shotgun approach to cell transport. So, if I need to get a material from here to here, it's got to diffuse this far. Okay, so if it is super concentrated right here, where let's say it's being produced, okay, it might look like that. Like there'd be a whole bunch of it right there, all really close together. Okay, but as diffusion takes place, okay, that is going to spread outwards in all directions in kind of a cone like this. Okay. Well, by the time it gets this far, that's those same number of dots are in a lot of different places because they're spreading out in all directions. Anywhere where the concentration is lower is where they're going to go, not necessarily to this point where they are needed. Across this distance, maybe only, 5 of the 25 that I drew there, they are actually going to get sort of where they're needed. The rest aren't. Okay? In a cell this size, if I have that same situation, so I got all those little purple dots, okay, that cone that we drew, okay, doesn't spread out nearly as much before it gets to the destination. So by the time we get to the destination, a lot more purple dots ended up in there. Okay, does everyone kind of follow me on that? Okay, it's much better for a cell to be able to transport materials by diffusion if it's small. It's why you don't see giant cells. Okay, it's why there isn't an amoeba sitting in front of Becky. Okay, it just wouldn't work. Right? Having a giant cell like the size of us, okay, wouldn't be able to survive because material just wouldn't get where it's needed in an acceptable amount of time. Okay, everyone all right with that idea? Okay. So, here's the reason, mathematically, why that's true. Cells have essentially just their membrane through which they can take in material and excrete waste. And those are the things that have to travel through the cytoplasm once they enter the cell or on their way out of the cell. So they're the things that are moving by diffusion. Their membrane is their surface area. Okay? The cytoplasm is their volume. How many dimensions are there to surface area? 2. Length and width. Now I know you're looking at a cell and going, but it's a sphere, Coderre. Its surface area is still a 2-dimensional measurement. Okay? But its volume is a 3-dimensional measurement. So if I'm looking at a cube, for example, just to do something simple, to calculate the surface area of a cube, I would take the length of the cube times the width of the cube times the number of sides, 6. Okay? And that would get me the surface area. To calculate the volume of that same cube, I would go length times width times height. Everyone okay with that? All right, so if I have a cell that is, let's say, 3 micrometers by 3 micrometers, okay, I can calculate its surface area fairly easily, and I would calculate its volume fairly easily. Okay, volume's obviously going to be a bit bigger here. Okay, actually not bigger, it's going to be smaller in this case. Okay, but here's what happens. As that cell grows, which of these things gets bigger faster? The volume. Okay, because for the surface area, only 2 numbers get bigger. The 6 always stays the same. For the volume, all 3 numbers get bigger. Okay? And so as a cell increases in size, its volume gets bigger faster than the surface area that is supposed to feed it and clean it. Okay? That's a problem for a cell because now all the stuff that it takes in takes forever to get where it's going, and all the toxic waste products it's trying to get rid of take forever to get out. Okay? That is not a good situation. Right? A cell wants to be small because having a small volume and a comparatively large surface area is much healthier than having a small surface area, okay, and an extraordinarily large volume. Everyone okay with that idea? That's what we're looking at today. Okay, kind of a mathematical analysis of that today. Okay, so this little bit here, okay, we talked a bit about this yesterday. Cells absorb nutrients and excrete waste through their membrane, which is their surface area, but they have to transport through their cytoplasm, which is their volume. Okay, as a cell size increases, volume increases faster than surface area, and transport times get longer. Okay, as the now comparably smaller surface area must supply and clean a greater volume. Diffusion is too slow to supply the needs of the very large cells as a result. As a result, cells do not typically reach large sizes. What do they do when they get big? They divide. Yeah, size is actually one of the triggering factors for cell division. Okay? When a cell is detecting that it's having trouble transporting material, it will divide and get smaller. Okay? Everyone all right with that? Okay. So what you have in front of you, okay, is the Google Doc for this. Okay, so the problem we're investigating here is how does the surface area relate to volume in cells of different sizes? Okay, how does dividing a large cell into smaller cells affect the surface area to volume ratio? We're going to calculate the ratios together. Okay, so you need a hypothesis. There's no design to this one. Okay, there are no variables here. This is just a mathematical analysis. Okay, so there's no experiment to be done here. Okay, we are still going to have a hypothesis about the relationship. So the if part of your hypothesis, okay, needs to talk about the transport of materials by diffusion, okay, and what the effect of getting larger would be. Okay, so the if part needs to talk about how cells transport materials by diffusion. So like if cells transport materials by diffusion, kind of like that. It's pretty simple. Okay?
How do you reset a slow computer again?
So shut it down completely, wait for all the lights to go off, then count to 10, and then turn it back on.
I've done that 3 times already, but it still won't load.
I just had to grab a different one because it was not working.
Is it not connecting?
It connects and then it just takes 5 minutes to load each page.
Try it one more time and then I'll do a hard boot. Okay. Okay, the and part, guys, all we're doing in this activity is, for the and part of this hypothesis, okay, all we're doing in this activity is comparing theoretical organisms of varying sizes. Okay, so, and theoretical organisms of various sizes are compared to something like that. Okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, the then part of your hypothesis should talk about, okay, what's going to happen to a cell's ability to transport material as it gets larger. Okay, or you could talk about what will happen to its surface area and volume as it gets bigger. Either one of those would be acceptable here.
So can you start the and just go into the thing? Sorry.
I'm recording it all. Just skip over it for now. Okay. Okay, so if cells transport by diffusion and theoretical cells of various sizes are compared, then talk about what will happen to surface area and volume because the cell being big. Okay, so our measure of a cell's ability to transport materials in this activity is going to be its surface area to volume ratio. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to compare these three theoretical organisms: micro, macro, and multi-micro. In other words, a small single-celled organism, a large single-celled organism, and a multicellular organism. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to calculate their surface areas and their volumes and put them in a ratio. Okay, now a good number here, if we're talking about having a good measure of a cell's ability to transport by diffusion, we want to have a big surface area and a small volume. We want surface area to be the larger of the two numbers. If volume gets bigger, okay, it's going to get bigger faster than surface area, and it's going to tip the balance very quickly. All right, so ideally, we would like the surface area to be the bigger number. Okay, everyone follow me so far? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You have a chart in your lab report right here. We're going to fill that in. We're going to do all these calculations together right now, and it's out of 5 marks. So everyone should get 5 out of 5 here, provided they pay attention and write these numbers down. Sound fair? It's not really fair, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. All right, so micro, we're going to say, is 1 micrometer by 1 micrometer by 1 micrometer. That's really small, but that's what we're going to say just for simplicity's sake. All right? So it's a cube. If I want to calculate its surface area, I go length times width times 6. Length times width gets me the surface area of one side, then I multiply by the number of sides. 1 times 1 is? 1. Times 6 is?
6.
Okay. So that means the surface area of micro is 6 square micrometers.
How do you write that? How do you square?
The U, sorry, the mu, you can just put a U in. Just put U. We'll be fast. Squared.
6. How do you do square?
Control period.
The squared, you go control,
Period.
period. Yeah, that goes up. Control comma goes down. Okay. Now, what's the volume of micro if it's 1 by 1 by 1? 1, yeah. 1 cubic micrometer. Which means the surface area to volume ratio of micro is 6 to 1. Is that a desirable number? Yes. Surface area is far larger than volume. That's good. All right. Macro is a very large single-celled organism. It is 10 micrometers by 10 micrometers by 10 micrometers. Okay, so its surface area would be 10 times 10, which is 100 times 6, which is, okay, so it's 600 square micrometers. What's its volume? 1,000. 10 times 10 times 10 cubic micrometers. Now our ratio is 0.6 to 1. Is that good or bad? That's bad. Okay, now our surface area is smaller than our volume. Okay. All right. Multimicro is a multicellular organism made up of many cells. Okay? In fact, in multimicro, there are 1,000 little microbes because there's 10 on a side. Okay? So, what's its volume, first off? Yeah, 1,000. It's 10 by 10 by 10. It's the same size as macro. Okay? So its volume is 1,000. But here's where it's different. Where macro is hollow and only has 6 sides, multimicro has 6,000 sides. Because every cell has 6 sides. Does that make its surface area larger than macros? Yes. So if every little micro has a surface area of 6, and there are 1,000 of them, the surface area of multimicro is 6,000 micrometers. Which puts us right back to that 6 to 1 ratio. Is this an advantage to being multicellular? Yeah, multicellular organisms can get big because they don't encounter this surface area to volume ratio because they're made up of many small cells that all have a good surface area to volume ratio. Okay? We don't transport anything by diffusion from like our stomach to our brain. Okay? Obviously we have an active circulatory system that does that for us. Okay? But we also never have to transport materials more than the distance across a single small cell. Okay? That's what makes us more efficient than a large single-celled organism. Okay? All right, that's 5 marks. Everybody's got that filled in now. Okay? Now you got the analysis questions to work on. Okay? So let's quickly talk about those. Okay? Because the wording of some of these is a little odd. Okay? For question number 1, it says when the cube dimensions increase from 1 to 10, so when we go from micro to macro, the increase is a factor of 10. What is the factor of increase for the surface area? What is the factor of increase for the volume? So here's what they're asking you. Go back to your chart and tell me how much bigger is this number than this number? And how many times bigger is this number than that number? Is that a pretty easy operation? Okay. But the wording is confusing, right? That's all you're being asked to do. How many times bigger, how many times bigger? Okay, for question number 2, they're asking you to compare the 2 big cubes, so macro and multimicro. Okay? The size and volume have a factor of 1. That means they're the same size. Okay? Calculate the factor for the difference in surface area between these 2 cubes. In other words, how many times bigger is the surface area of multimicro than macro? So, back to my chart. How many times bigger is this number than that number? Not difficult. Okay? Okay, question number 3. For which 2 cubes does the volume and surface area change when the size increases? Okay, so here's what you need to know about this question. If I go back to my diagrams, okay, if micro gets bigger, will its surface area to volume ratio change? if macro gets bigger, will its surface area to volume ratio change? If multi-micro gets bigger, will its surface area to volume ratio change? Keeping in mind that in a multicellular organism, when you grow, you make more what? Cells. So if this gets bigger, it is going to fill the additional space with more microbes. Okay? So in that case then, which two cubes have their surface area to volume ratio change when they get bigger? Only two of them. Okay? Which two will have a change in their surface area to volume ratio when they get bigger? Keeping in mind that if multi-micro gets bigger, it will simply fill that space with more microbes.
Do you need to explain why?
Yes, just a brief explanation as to why. No, sorry, it doesn't ask for why. That question doesn't ask for why, but it comes up in the next one. Okay, now, for question number 4, it is asking about this diagram right here. Okay, on your diagram, the sizes aren't on there. Okay, so you'll need to make note of these sizes. Okay, box A is like macro. It has exactly the same dimensions as macro, so you don't need to do any extra math. Okay, box B is 10 millimeters by 5 millimeters by 20 millimeters. Okay, now, what you're going to be asked to do in question number 4 is calculate the surface area to volume ratio for each one of these, and then tell me, does shape affect the surface area to volume ratio? Because, spoiler alert, the volume of all of those is the same. Or very, very close. Okay, it's effectively the same volume for all of them. Okay, but their surface areas might be different. Now, when you're calculating the surface area of B and C, you can't just go length times width times 6, can you? Because they're not cubes. Okay, the sides are all different sizes. So that means you've got to calculate the area of side 1 and multiply it by 2. Find the surface area of side 2 and multiply it by, and 3 and multiply it by, and then add them all together. Okay, so a little bit of like grade 7 geometry. Okay, coming back. And then same thing for C. Okay, C is 1 millimeter by 90 by 10. Okay. Actually, it's supposed to be not 90. It's supposed to be 100. Okay, so in question number 4, calculate the surface area and volume. Spoiler alert, the volume's the same for all of them. Okay, so that can save you a little bit of work. They all have the same volume, especially now that I fixed that number. Okay, they all have the same volume. So you need to calculate the surface area and volume of each one of those, and then tell me, does size affect the surface area to volume ratio, and give me a little explanation. Sorry, not size, does shape affect the surface area to volume ratio, okay? Because you'll see that pretty clearly once you do the math. Okay? Okay, for question number 5 is basically the same question, except now it's saying, instead of these imaginary boxes, now it's these cells in your body. Okay? The liver cell is like box A. Okay? A liver cell is pretty uniform. It's surrounded on all sides by blood vessels. Okay? So it doesn't have much to worry about. A skin cell is more like B. It's flatter in one dimension. Okay? And the nerve cell is more like C. In fact, you have some nerve cells that run from the base of your brain to the small of your back. Okay? You have single nerve cells that are close to 1 meter in length. But they're really, really skinny. Okay? So, and along your spinal cord, are there blood vessels running along the side of them? So does anything ever have to diffuse from this end to that end? It only has to diffuse across, right? Because it's got blood vessels on both sides. Okay, so it's basically asking, these have different shapes, but they all survive. Why is that? Why is that? Okay, give me kind of a best guess kind of answer on that. Okay, number 6 is asking about the blood cells. Okay, the red blood cells, they have a biconcave shape. All right, what's the job of a red blood cell?
Transfer oxygen.
Right, they transport oxygen and they carry it on their membrane, so on their surface area. All right, so tell me, is this shape, okay, which looks like this from the side, beneficial to just being a sphere? Okay, tell me why. All right, it's about surface area. And then for number 7, okay, basically tell me what you know about diffusion, what happens as a cell gets big, okay, or has a low surface area to volume. Just give me your own words on the stuff we talked about at the beginning of class, okay, where I had the 2 cells and all that. Put that in your own words. Okay, that's what I'm looking at for number 7. Conclusion, copy paste your hypothesis. Tell me, as cells got bigger, did their surface area to volume ratio get worse? Okay, and what does that mean? Okay, questions there? All right, you have the rest of class, which is 36 minutes to work on that. Okay, you should be, I would say, close to done, if not done. Okay, in that time. I'm not trying to make a ton of homework for you. Okay, this is kind of an in-class activity, so if you can get it done for the end of class, that's awesome. Okay? If not, I didn't make it due till Friday. Okay, but when you're done, submit it, and I'll get going on the marking. All right, questions from you guys? Okay, I'm going to shut up and let you work then.